leave early, it's not because of your lesson. I'm waiting for a guy to call me. But just letting you know, I don't want you to think, wow, he didn't like first.
You got it covered.
Good morning, welcome to the 10 o'clock session of Revive. I think this session is whitewater rafting down the Niagara Falls. No, that's the one down the hall. So if that's the one you're looking for, it's down the hall. Dr. Bill Hardy is our speaker. In fact, he'll have 3 sessions today on how and when to have a successful campaign. We're privileged to have Bill and Kathy with us this morning. Bill has been a gospel preacher for over 40 years, pulpit minister, youth minister, served as elders. Bill and Kathy are involved with Sojourners, and appreciate their work for the Lord's kingdom. He's on the board with Home Mission, which means a lot to me as the organization that I work with, and they are involved with gospel sharing ministries. How and when to have a successful campaign. Bill, good to have you.
All right. Thank you, Don. Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
very much. Joy, and appreciate Don and the work that he does with Home Mission. Invaluable. You know, as you know, it takes funds, it takes resources to be able to do what Home Mission does, and so we're just thankful for them. Now, good to have each one of you here this morning. Especially good to have Brother Tim Burrows here this morning with, as you all know him, president of SIBI, and just appreciate the work that he does and the great expansion efforts that are being put forth there. Good to have Brian Spicer, as you all know, with the disaster relief, and also good to have one of my colleagues here and fellow board members with Gospel Sharing Ministries. And walking in Brother Colley, one of my former board members, as we served on a youth camp organization together. So just good to have everybody here. Let me first of all just say again, my lovely wife, 44 years, 5 kids, and 7 grandkids later. And I'll tell you, I know people always look at her and then they take a double take and look at me, and they thinking, I can tell what they're thinking, you know what I'm saying? You know, there's a story behind the story, but I'm just so thankful that she's here with us, and it's always keeping me straight on something, and so I just thank God for her. So, how and when to have a successful campaign? Now, I'm going to be talking about the campaigns that we do. Some 42 campaigns over the last several years, and I'll share with you some of the figures so that you can see, because numbers don't lie. You know, people guess and they have their opinions, but when we look at the numbers, they tell the tape. So when we think about how and we think about when, 2 different things that we're going to try to discuss today. But overall, if you looked in the little outline, is that having a fruitful, effective, and successful campaign can be like preparing and planting a successful and fruitful, productive garden. It requires some planning. It requires some praying. It requires some preparing for the members of the congregation to not only to seek new members, but also to keep new members. And then not only to seek them and keep them, but also to connect with them and to train them. We think in terms of when we're in some academic training or professional training, one of the things that we see is there's 3 aspects. And when we see this, it's the same way it is when we talk about discipleship or discipling new converts. And that is, there's some teaching involved. We see that in Matthew chapter 28, as Jesus says, go and teach. But then there's also some training that's involved after we teach them. You know, if you've been a nurse or you've been in some professional aspect of something, you sit in a classroom, you've got the teaching, the sharing, implementing of information. But then somebody's got to demonstrate to you how to use that information. All too often, too many of our congregations are staying in the didactic phase. And we are learning a lot of Bible, But when it comes down to the training, that means implementing and demonstrating the skills of how to use this biblical information in everyday life. Sometimes we're falling short of that. And so we have to distinguish the difference between the sharing and teaching of information, the training of how to have the skills to use that information. And that's really what we try to help when we go to congregations, is to help get the members from the pew to out in the streets to apply the knowledge and the information they have about the Word of God. And so that requires some training. And when we go in, we try to take folks by the hand, women, men, I hate to use the term lay members, but people that are other than the preacher. All too long, we have a model, almost, we see that model where it's the preacher's job, it's the elder's job. But just remember, Paul told Timothy and Titus that they were just supposed to be the examples to the believers. So that means the believers are supposed to follow that same example. The elders are supposed to be the examples to the flock, but that means the flock is supposed to follow that same example. So if the elders are supposed to be apt to teach, what about the members? What about the members? And so we need to be willing and able to show them a process that can be easily duplicatable. Many times we think in terms of folks will say, I can't teach like Tim Burrow. I don't have as much Bible knowledge as John Orr. All right? And therefore, people will acquiesce to say, I can't do it. But what we need to be able to do is help duplicate each of ourselves. And if we don't have a simple process that's duplicatable, isn't that what Jesus and the disciples did? A duplicatable process. And therefore, they were able to turn the world upside down with the gospel. All right? And so we need to be able to do the same thing. We don't necessarily need to come and teach members to be able to debate or have the theological gymnastics. But we need to be able to share our faith in a way that is duplicatable and to teach them to do the same. And so that's what we go in and do. But we don't go in to do that job for them. All right? We go in to demonstrate. And then after about a week or so, or even a few days, we have a simple process that if a person can read, they can follow this process. And imagine if every Christian is able to duplicate themselves, and 1 goes to 2, and 2 goes to 4, and 4 goes to 8, and 8 goes to 16. Imagine, in 30 days, if 1 penny duplicates itself every day for 30 days, we're talking about $10 million. All right? And so no wonder the disciples were able to turn the world upside down with the gospel. But then the other aspect of preparing to have a successful campaign is to the bonding aspect, okay? And so that we teach members not only to teach and to train, but how to bond with new converts. The best time, or the best time to conduct a evangelistic campaign, and we're calling this, for lack of a better terms, not a door-knocking campaign, but a lifestyle-changing campaign, all right? A community outreach campaign, so that it's not just for that 1 week that we do the campaign, but we're hoping to transform and to ignite members of that congregation to become so enthusiastic about sharing their faith that they realize that the campaign does not stop on Friday evening. And the work does not stop at the baptistry. that's simply the beginning of developing a new relationship and with a new Christian and seeing lives transformed and changed to go from being in the kingdom of darkness and into the kingdom of the light of God's dear Son. A new life, a new creation, taking off that old person and putting on the new. All right, so the best time to have a campaign is this. Well, it sort of goes like this. When is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago, right? Well, but when is the second best time to plant a tree? All right? Right now. All right? And so when we think in terms of that, when it comes to having a campaign, we say that the best time is when you have 100% of the church leadership. Every ministry leader, the youth leader, the singles leader, ministry leader, the women's ministry leader, every Sunday school teacher, every elder, every deacon, every ministry leader that's 100% on board with the campaign. 100% on board, all right? So when would be the second best time to have a campaign? When you got 99, right? How about the third? You see the point? The point is that leaders have to lead, all right? And if you have naysayers in the leadership, all it takes is one or two. Well, door knocking and outreach campaign, I don't believe that works. We tried that years ago. No use in doing that. Then it's hard to have a successful campaign. But what I want to share with you is some numbers so that you can see that some of the churches that didn't have maybe 100% went ahead and sure, you've been doing this, Travis, a lot longer than I have in terms of working with We Care and gospel sharing ministries. But some churches just went ahead even though they didn't have 100%. They didn't even have 99% or 98% of the leadership involved. But that's the goal, all right? And then you can expect that if we can have at least 1/4 of the church membership to show up in support of learning, because we're going to go in, we're going to do a 3-day pre-campaign seminar. If we've got 25%, you've got 100 members of the congregation, if you've got 50 and we go in and we do a pre-campaign seminar, we want to see about 25% of 1/4 of the congregation show up. Why is that? Well, it tells us that we're going to have people, at least 10% of that congregation is going to be willing to go out and actually walk the streets with us, all right? So if we've got at least 10%, these are thresholds that we tend to use historically, that will actively participate. And that doesn't mean that that whole 10% are actually going out on the streets, because as we will demonstrate, there are a lot of things that can be done to prepare for a campaign and to support a campaign that does not include walking the streets. Okay, so those people that say, well, you know, my arthritis is too bad, I can't walk, my back is bad, my knees are bad, those people can still participate and are considered a part of that campaign. Even someone that may say, well, I can't go out, but I will support, I'll cook a meal, or I will come and be a part of the fellowship, I'll be a part of the prayer team, and that's very, very important, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I just want to give you an overview so that if we run out of time or you have to leave, you kind of have this overview, okay? Then, once these thresholds, now let me back up. Not only that, but we need to have mature Christians, spiritually mature Christians that will be willing to serve as mentors, one-on-one, with each one of the new converts. In other words, if we go there, and you'll see the numbers here, let me just go ahead and put the numbers up. And you see these numbers, and we end up, I don't know how clear that is, and we end up baptizing, can y'all see that? Obviously, some of these didn't turn out, but let me ask you something. If you look at this and you see mission being Were you there? 667 doors were knocked. Travis, were you there? That was a few years ago. That was in 2014. 667 doors were knocked. A third of those people were found at home. 14 prayer requests, 14 studies with 14 people, 0 people baptized. Would you consider that a successful campaign? As compared to maybe this one, Rush, Texas, where 518 doors were knocked. Can y'all see that? Okay, 518 doors were knocked. 275 people were found at home. 89 prayer requests, 92 studies with 92 people and 21 people. Which one would you say was the most successful campaign? From our standpoint of view.
Follow up.
Yeah, follow up. We don't know how much that will result, right? But we gave 667 people the opportunity to either accept, reject, or obey the gospel of Christ. That's our job. That's our job, all right? To give people the opportunity. The rest is left up to them and the work of the Holy Spirit in their lives, all right? And it's unfortunate that sometimes we look at numbers and we think, oh, we failed. No, our job is to get out there and share and plant the seeds, all right? Jesus described that in Matthew chapter 13, Luke chapter 8. What? One out of 4? You know, some fell by the wayside. 4 different souls, right? So we just got to accept that that's what's going to happen. But what I want you to see is that out of 35 campaigns, this goes back a few years, you see how many doors were knocked, and you see how many people were baptized within that. But the real number is how many people were given the opportunity to accept, to reject, or to obey the gospel of Christ. That's when we've done our job. But I can tell you, we can go down the list of all the different places that we've gone, and every congregation is just like every individual. They have different personalities. They have different resources. They have different makeup. They have different composition. And so we just adapt and adjust. But the main thing is the gospel is the same. The format is the same. All right? The teaching is the same. Now, if we were to look at all of these and add them all up, which we've done, you'll see that after 42 campaigns, 17,000, well, roughly 18,000 doors were knocked, we found almost 7,000 people at home. 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3. So anybody that says door knocking in this day and age is not successful, we're finding on average 1 out of 3 doors that we knock, we find someone at home. And of those, 1 out of 4 people that we find at home end up allowing us to do a Bible presentation. Okay? And really, when you look at that, if you even discount the number that were rescued or soul saved, we've done our job there. Because after the presentation, is that our job? To make them obey, to twist their arms to obey? That's their call, right? That's them and the Holy Spirit. I would say that's a pretty successful track record. All right? So, how and when? Anybody remember or know the history of the Nike commercial, Just Do It? Anybody remember a fellow by the name of Gary Gilmore back in 1977, a Utah prisoner that was executed in 1977? Anybody remember that? Okay, I don't know why I remember those kind of things, but one of the phrases that he said on his way to the firing squad was, "Let's do it. Let's just do it." All right? And so, I know I hate to start off with something that morbid, but the idea, sisters and brothers, is we need to have the idea that we are to be martyrs for Christ. And we need to have that kind of mentality. All right? Just do it. Step out on faith and let's just do it. All right? That phrase back in 1998 was tweaked a little bit by a Nike executive and turned into something that we all know and has been used as a marketing strategy for many, many years. Just do it. All right? We're never going to have 100%. We're never going to have everything perfect. We're never going to have everything just right. Sometimes we just got to have the idea of what the Bible tells us in Revelation chapter 12 and about verses number 13, I believe it is that they were able to overcome Satan. How? With the blood of the Lamb and with the testimony, with their testimony. We have a great testimony about the blood of the Lamb. But it also says, number 3, that they did not hold their lives more dear. Sisters and brothers, when we have the attitude that we are willing to give a comfortable life up for the cause of Christ, when we're willing to step out of our comfort zone for the cause of Christ, to just do it. Our speaker earlier was saying how the young people that go over to a foreign country feel, and some of you no doubt have been there. I know I have. We talked about Haiti earlier. Don and I, 1999, my wife and I and our 4 daughters did a missionary trip and went there to Haiti, a very poor country.
Revelations 12:11.
Thank you, sweetie. And you see why I just thank God for her. I'm always just a little numbers off. Revelation 12:11. You all knew that. But the fact of the matter is that we have to be willing to surrender. We have to be willing to just do it sometimes. So let's talk about some practical things now. Overview. Some of you that are very familiar with home missions, our goal is to be the second step, gospel sharing. John and I and the leadership with Home Missions met probably, I want to say 5 years ago at a workshop that we hosted. And by the way, Gospel Sharing Ministries under the elders there in Palestine. So we met in Palestine, Texas. And this is how congregations get prepared to do a campaign. They're calling in a home mission evangelist. They'll come in and they'll do what's called the launch or the hangar. Once they do that, just to kind of get the congregation exposed and the idea of working together and then setting some goals, the hopes, stars, cards, and go through that with them, the circle of influence, so that we're doing, the idea here is if you're getting ready to plant a field, you don't just go out and start slinging seeds, right? You have to do some soil testing, right? You want to find out what's in the soil. What are the resources at this congregation? What's going on in the community? What is needed in the soil, right? Does this need more nitrogen? Does it need more calcium? I remember a few years ago, my wife and I, we plowed up and got excited about